Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning from wherever you're joining us from. My name is Shon Osimbo, and welcome to the Shon Osimbo Sports Show. This is the episode 4, and here is the place where we have fun, we learn, we educate ourselves, and we also get to, relive the memories with some of our guests. Today, I'm humbled to talk to Mark Bowen. He is a coach and also a former player, and also I know so many Kenyans know him from his work with Reading FC. So welcome to the show, Mark Bowen. It's such a I'm humbled actually to have you on the show. Welcome. How's everything like right now in the UK?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here talking to you, Sean. It's the UK at the moment, we're going into our second lockdown. So I guess we're all struggling around the world at the moment with this terrible situation that's going on. But we've got to try and make the best of it, I suppose. So, but I suppose in lockdown, it's more time to watch more football matches and certainly catch up on things that I need to catch up on to stay ahead of the game.
Amazing. And let's just now quickly, briefly break it down for our viewers who are watching today. Who's Mark Bowen, for those who don't know you, and just everything about you?
Okay, as briefly as I can tell you, I've been in the game a long time as a player and a coach, 40 years now. First 20 years as a professional. I started off when I left school at Tottenham Hotspur. Then I went on to Norwich City. From Norwich City to West Ham. From West Ham, I spent a year in Japan playing football in Japan, and then I went back to Charlton Athletic. Had a short spell at Wigan Athletic in the Championship, and then went straight into coaching. Mark Hughes is one of my oldest and dearest friends. And I was lucky enough at 36 years old. Then I became the assistant manager of the Welsh national team. And then club-wise, coaching-wise, I've been assistant manager and coach at, I'll take a breath here, wait for it. I've been assistant manager and coach at Blackburn Rovers, Manchester City, Fulham, Queen's Park Rangers, Stoke City, Southampton, and Reading.
Yes, amazing. Let's just quickly go back to your football days. Do you have any best memories from your playing days?
Yes, I think obviously making my international debut for Wales when I was 19 years old. Yeah, it was my debut was actually a friendly game against Canada, but obviously it's the very proud moment when you stand there and you hear the national anthem being played. It's it's a special moment as well. And I was lucky enough to play over 40 games for Wales at national level. From a club point of view, I was involved in the UEFA Cup final for Tottenham Hotspur. We beat Anderlecht in the final. I didn't get on the pitch, but just to be a part of that situation, because it was my club that I'd grown up as a schoolboy from. So that was a proud moment as well. I suppose I'm best remembered, Sean, for scoring for Norwich City against Bayern Munich in the UEFA Cup. The header from a fair way out, and I surprise myself even now.
Look at this picture.
That was before I got stressed out with being a coach, So I scored against Bayern Munich, and I think that's probably my claim to fame, what people remember me most for in club football.
Amazing. And just for those who are watching, I see your comments are coming in. Peter Sebe saying good show, Ochiwede saying great insights there. Kindly keep your comments coming, and also you can drop questions for Mark. He will take some questions later on in the show and he can get to answer. I know there's some people who would love to be coaches in future. There's some people who would love to see Mark in Africa. So anything you want to talk to us about, just drop it in the comment box below, and then definitely we'll take those questions and comments later. So let's still just from, I know football in terms of how it has evolved over time. What are the major differences you can see from your playing days and now, Mark?
Well, I think players are much better prepared, certainly these days in terms of, every coach for a start, when they, a manager of a team, they're surrounded now by sports scientists, by nutritionists, by, people doing the gym work and everything. And certainly in when I was playing, it seemed to be a manager. He had his assistant, and then it was like a physio, and that was it. So a lot more attention to detail that goes into preparing players now, and I guess a lot more expected of players really in your preparation as a professional. In those days, it's well documented. If you played game on a Saturday or whatever day it was and you won, and then the players would go out, maybe have a few beers, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen now, but there's certainly a lot more, I think, professionalism in the game now.
Yes, I know. Also, in your coaching career, you've had a lot of advice for upcoming players, and the players you've also got a chance to manage. So, what is your advice to the current crop of players, especially these players who've had to face a pandemic, who've had to play in front in a stadium without fans? That's a bit different. Things are changing. What is your advice to the current crop of players?
I guess to any individual player, be it young or growing into the game, or even a veteran in the game, is to, just to try and have that professionalism in every single thing you do. It's not about just playing a game on a Saturday, and it's about everything that goes towards that. Every training session, the way you live your life can certainly be a massive help as well. But also this thing that I use a lot with players is show a bit of humility. I see a lot of players at different levels of the game who good players, sometimes bad players even, who actually get ahead of themselves, and they start thinking or believing too much how good they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. All players have got to have a level of confidence. But at the same time, if you've got a degree of humility about yourself, I think that always brings the best out of players, not just as footballers, but as individual people as well.
Yes, amazing. And now let's move on to the other side. I know you've talked a bit about your football career, but definitely we have to talk about coaching. And I know so many people wanted to hear this, and I can't wait to read some of the questions. So what does it take to be a coach, Mark?
To be a coach, I think it's about, first and foremost, being able to manage people, manage players. There's so many different personalities, different characters as players in the game now, and it's yes, it's a team game that we're in, but at the same time, if you can get the best out of individuals, then the team becomes stronger anyway. So I think you've got to be very mindful of recognizing the individual within the team and knowing what makes that individual click, what makes him stronger, what makes him weaker sometimes. If you say the wrong thing or you react to him the wrong way. So very much about, I think, with coaches tend to have this thing, well, they put on training sessions. Well, I dare say most coaches should be able to put on a good training session and develop the quality of that session. But what really needs to go alongside that is your management of players, not just off the pitch, but on the training pitch as well, to try and get the best out of them. So it's, I guess, to say the man management of players you've always got to be aware of, always got to work on, and try and be better than you are to get the best out of them.
Yes, and before we go to the next question, we have a question here. Oshiweda asks, ask Mark what has changed in football management now and during your play days.
I think now, or certainly when I was playing days, and even when I first became a coach 20 years ago, it was very much you were the manager was the boss and could run things as he liked. And I'm not saying that. Certainly, I think Jurgen Klopp can do that now. Jose Mourinho can do that now. But the majority of coaches and managers out there now, you've got to have one eye on what they say about managing above yourself. You'll have a hierarchy above you, a chief executive, an owner who will have expectations of the club. So, and that relates to the fact as a coach in Manchester, sometimes you don't get enough time at the club because their expectation far outweighs what you think you can do with the team that you've got. So you've got to be very mindful these days, again, of what I call managing above yourself as well.
Awesome. And I know, let's now just quickly get into the details about your journey and everything. So if you can take us through your coaching journey, I think people really want to hear that, how it all came about, who your role model was in your coaching journey, and a couple of the clubs that you have actually managed.
Yeah. Well, I was. It's a funny story, actually, because when I was coming to the end of my playing days, Mark Hughes, who everybody will know out there, Mark and I had known each other since we were only about 12, 13 years old, where I at the time, I was playing for Wales schoolboys from the south of Wales, and Mark was playing for the north of Wales. We played against each other, and I guess we were probably the better of the two sort of players in that age group. So we played for Wales schoolboys together, and we shared rooms together. So we were friends for a long time. And when we came to the end of our playing days, then we were both about 36 years old, and I wanted to get into coaching. Mark wasn't too sure himself, but the first coaching course I went on, Mark was there, and it was called the UEFA B license, and we did that fairly straightforward, and then I actually put myself and him forward for the A license. He didn't know about this at the time until I rang him and told him we'd both been accepted on the course. So we did the A license, and I did the same thing then for the Pro license. I put us both forward for the Pro license. It was the inaugural Pro license at the time. It was the very first UEFA Pro license that was done in England, and we were the first candidates, if you like. There was, I think, about 10 or 12 of us. I think Steve McLaren was one as well. People know Steve very well. And so we started coaching that way, and at an early age, relatively speaking, for just finished playing our playing days, we got into the coaching side, and then out of the blue, really, Mark got offered the chance to be the Welsh national team coach. And here's the funny story that he got given the job, and the day that he got given the job, I rang him up and basically said, right, I said, when are we starting?
Just like that.
Yeah. Hold on, Mark. He said, I can't, it's going to be hard for me to just give you a job as my assistant. But he said, okay, what I will do is I'll bring you along with the Wales under-21 squad, with the younger squad, and we'll see how it goes from there. So I started off doing the Wales under-21s for about 3 or 4 games. And then Mark, obviously, he'd seen me working with a group of players, not just as a friend, but just as a coach. He liked what he saw, so he then rang me and invited me to come along as his assistant with the national team. So that's how I started, really. From there, then, we'd been doing the Welsh national team. I got a job, I got a position with Steve Bruce at Birmingham City.
Yes.
And we were very lucky. We did very well. We got promotion with Birmingham into the Premier League. And I was enjoying that situation. But then Mark, who was my friend at the time, obviously, he got the job at Blackburn Rovers. So I went with Mark onto Blackburn Rovers. And I think in that time, it was round about that time where the standout manager, if you like, at the time really was Arsene Wenger, because everybody was very much aware that Arsene was changing things at Arsenal. Something different he was doing with the nutrition, and the way the periodization that he was doing with the training was something that had not been seen in this country before, in the UK before. So I think as a yardstick to look at and think, well, okay, everybody wanted to know what Arsene was doing. So he was probably one of the first managers, if you like, that you looked to and thought, well, what can you copy off him, So yeah, we had, again, Blackburn Rovers had 4 good years, a small club, but with a rich history. And in the 4 years we were there, I think we were never outside the top 10 of the Premier League, and we got to 3 or 4 semi-finals, played in Europe, and really made a name for ourselves there. That's when we started really looking into the sports science sort of things. I mean, we brought in good players, and some good African players played for us. Aaron McQuaina and Benny McCarthy from South Africa.
Yeah.
We had Shabani Nonda, who came in as well on loan for us, and Chris Samba came in as well. So we tapped into the African market at the time, which was obviously, I think it was more or less, around about the start, and we saw really good African players coming into the Premier League, and we were lucky enough to tap into that at the time. And then we got a situation at the end of that, the 4 years there, I think we were ready to move on, and we got the opportunity to go to Manchester City. It was Thaksin Shinawatra was the owner of the club at the time, before Sheikh Mansour took over. But he brought us in just after Sven-Goran Eriksson left. He got sacked, and we went into Manchester City. Had 2 good years there. That was probably the most disappointed coming out of Man City that myself and certainly Mark were, because it goes under the radar a bit now, but we took over a club that was a little bit disenfranchised at the time. It was, it was a strange club. It was an underperforming club. We saw it. It wasn't really big in terms of what they were producing on the field. And we had to do a lot of changing of things, to try and make it an elite environment. I think we did that. And Sheikh Mansour came in, took over the club, and again, very generous, the players he brought in, and we thought we had a good relationship, and we did, really. But after 2 years, the day we actually got sacked at Manchester City, I'll never forget it. We played Sunderland at home, and we beat them, I think it was 3-1. And at the time, we were third in the Premier League. We were in the semi-final of what is now the Carabao Cup, which is the League Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So it was. I'm laughing now, but it was a bit hard to take because, and I'll tell you why, Shon, because we actually knew, you could see what Sheikh Mansour was doing Man City, that it was going to become a huge club. And, we even talked about it and said, almost the longer we can stay there, we know we're going to be successful because of the players that will keep coming into the club. So the day we got sacked, it was almost like a fantastic opportunity being taken away from us, because I actually said, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I said at the time that, if my dad had gone into the club, he'd have probably won the Premier League soon, because that was the way the club was heading, and everybody knew it. So it was sad to move out to Manchester City at that time. And then,
just can I take a question before you continue with the story? Sorry to interrupt you. Just one question. Where about the sacking of a manager? We always see this go around, and sometimes you can see how heartbroken managers are when they receive the news, or when there's that, in the media it will be like it was a mutual understanding, but behind the scenes it was actually a different story.
Yeah.
How does one go through this, and how do you process it, and how do you decide, okay, this has happened, now let me move on?
Yeah, it's very hard because it's rejection, isn't it? I think probably the time we were sacked at Queen's Park Rangers was, if you like, the easiest sacking, because we hadn't been there long. Yes, we'd kept them in the Premier League, which was the job we were brought in to do, but results hadn't been very good. So you almost accept it then, But there's been other sackings where, I've actually, I know, Mark, as we thought, well, that was unfair. We'd done really well. We were going through a little bit of a difficult time, but, we were fully aware we could turn that situation around. There was, I guess, I was the only time where I thought, well, I don't know if we can turn this around. And actually, I don't know who could come in and turn it around, because it was a difficult setup at Queen's Park Rangers. And I think what you do is, so yes, it hurts your ego, definitely, and you're rejected. And I think managers, I fall into the second category here. A lot of managers tend to come out to clubs and they think, well, okay, I'll have a break, I'll have a rest, I'll go on holiday for 3 months and relax, and then I'll have a look to see what's out there. Well, I think my wife would tell you, she's here now, I'm a very impatient person. So if I'm out of a job, it's almost straight away I'm looking around and see, well, what's next? What's the next opportunity? And when can I take part in as soon as I can? Because let me tell you, I mean, when you're a manager, a coach who's been in the game for a long, long time, like I have, then it's agony on Saturdays sitting indoors watching football. You want to be out there. You want to be with your team,
Yeah. Okay. Now you can continue from now leaving Man City.
Okay. I'll take another deep breath.
It's okay. Feel free.
Well, we came out to Manchester City, and the next stop went on to Fulham Football Club, and had Fulham was a strange one, because when we first got the job, people questioned, why are you going into Fulham? Because Roy Hodgson had just been there, and they'd been in the UEFA Cup final, and he'd now gone to Liverpool, and they'd finished 12th in the Premier League. And it was almost like, well, you're going in there, you're never going to be able to beat what Roy did. So, why are you going in there? It's a small club. But we went in there and we really enjoyed it, found it a very well-run club, certainly by Alistair McIntosh, who was the chief executive then. But we had a situation, when I say very well-run, the owner of the club at the time was Mohammed Al-Fayed, who let's just say he made some strange decisions. He was a strange person, a nice person, but a bit strange the way he went about things. But we finished that first season. We finished 8th in the Premier League, and it was it was okay. But I know certainly Mark was very concerned really about a few promises had been made. He felt a few promises had been made to him by Mr. Al-Fayed that had been broken already. So he decided at the time, again, I'll never forget the day that, already the season had finished, and I'm planning for the year after, but it was almost a couple of weeks later, Mark had said, look, he said, I'm not really comfortable at the club. So he decided to walk away and just said, well, he didn't think Mr. Al-Fayed had the ambition that he had. Took a lot of stick for it, Mark, because I think it got reported that Mark was saying that Fulham weren't ambitious. Well, he didn't sort of mean it as a club. I think he meant it so he couldn't see, where the club was going to go from with what was going on above him, if you like. So a bit complicated, but he decided to walk away, and I followed him as well. So we came out of Fulham. After that, we got into the situation with Queen's Park Rangers, which is a difficult club again to work at, because they'd come up, and maybe talk about that later on. But the dressing room was a bit of a fractured dressing room. The players weren't getting on with each other too much. And then the Queen's Park Rangers, we went into Stoke City, which was a very, very well-run club and really had a really good time there.
Amazing. So how do you, I know that question, and I'll just read another question, but before I read that question, this is just a question that came into my mind. How do you deal with a dressing room where players don't get along with each other? What does a manager do in that position? Because I know for them to succeed, they don't have to be friends, but they need to at least have that working relationship to make sure, you get the 3 points that you are looking for in each and every match.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's very hard to answer because there's different things you can do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I guess if you give them time, then the players that you highlight that to the owners that maybe aren't conducive to a happy dressing room or successful dressing room, let's say, you move them on as best you can and bring your own players in. At Queen's Park Rangers, we weren't given that time to do. It was a strange one as well because Queen's Park Rangers, we'd stayed in the Premier League. The owner was very generous, again, wanted to spend quite big and bring players in. But I think, and this is only my take on it, there was a situation whereby the owner was, and the people surrounding him, we ended up bringing players in that really weren't the choice of Mark Hughes or myself. We were quite specific at the clubs we'd been at before then, the type of player we wanted. And I think the club, again, what I said earlier on, they got ahead of itself a little bit, thinking, well, we'll just go and buy players who, let's just say, are recommended by agents, and it didn't quite work out. But then, of course, it all comes down to the manager. He gets the finger pointed at him. Maybe right, maybe wrong. Maybe Mark could have dug his heels in a bit more and demanded the players that he wanted. But it was, a real fractured situation. The dressing room itself was a mixture of players who'd come up from the Championship, who thought they deserved a real good shout then at playing well in the Premier League. And it was, again, difference of opinion. Mark thought, well, we needed better players in to take the club forward. So there was always that bit of fraction between they felt as if they were undermined and they weren't happy with any new players coming in.
Yes. And when it comes to the watches, when it comes to the transfer season, sorry, there are managers who, they're given quite the amount. And then there are others that have to deal with the little and still compete with these giants when it comes to kicking that ball. How does this go? What do you tell your team? And you know very well that other manager during this transfer season, he or she was given, a good amount to spend on the players, and you see them bring big players and top players from across the world.
Yeah. I think it's sometimes it doesn't work. Obviously, it's been shown in the past. It doesn't always work spending a lot of money to bring in so-called superstar players. I think what really, to a certain level, I understand maybe the Liverpools, the Manchester Cities of this world, the Chelseas, maybe. But I think when you get below that, maybe top 4, 5, 6, a lot of it depends on, again, the dressing room being, pulling together. There's that culture within the club that you create as well. So sometimes you can use that, that okay, all players, believe me, all players want to see, if you're playing a football club, you want to see your club buy in players, as long as they're not in your position. The opposition is always a problem. The player will always say, "Oh, when are we buying players? Oh, we want new players and we want better players in." And I always say to them, "Be careful. That player might not be playing in your position if we bring them in." So there's always that as well. But it can sometimes affect the relationships in the dressing room. So, and I think if you have that group of players who are hungry and feel a little bit as if they've got something to prove all the time, obviously that's going to be better for you as well.
Yes, and we have another question. Why is it easier for some coaches to take back coaching jobs from clubs where they were once sacked? Is it desperation or what?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you say that again?
So the question is, Ochiweda is asking, why is it easier for some coaches to take back coaching jobs from clubs that they were once sacked? There it is on your screen.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think managers always feel that they can go back and improve on what they've done. I think they feel comfortable going back to the other club, even though they were sacked before. Sometimes I don't think that's particularly a good idea to do. You've been at the club, you've done what you can do there, and you move on. And I think it's, it only turns out well if you go back in there and then you start winning and the fans get behind you again. But I've seen players go back to their old clubs. They've been special players at those clubs. They've gone back there. It hasn't quite worked, and you almost tarnish your image.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And now let's just continue now with the interview. And definitely, I know you've spoken a lot about Mark Hughes. Please just tell us the key role he has played in your coaching journey and some of just the takeaways from his way of style when it comes to coaching.
Yeah, we've known each other. Obviously, I've been working with Mark up until I went to Reading. I think it was 17 years together, international sides, and through all these things. And we had a good balance with us in the way we worked. We had another coach who's a good friend of mine, Eddie Niedzweski, as well. The three of us really went to all those clubs together. And so the way it worked was that Mark was the manager. I was going to say the figurehead. I don't mean it like that. He's very, very good at what he does in the way he wants to set his teams up, and that's been proven. I actually don't think that Mark personally got a lot of the credit, for the clubs, the length of career he's had and what he's done at the clubs he's been at. But the way we worked, where Mark was the manager, I was his assistant who dealt with the way the team was prepared going up to the Saturday, and Eddie Niedzweski be part of, my right-hand man to make sure that worked. I wouldn't say Mark was let's say somebody who would go on the training ground and coach start to finish every day and set up the whole training situation. He would leave that to myself and Eddie. But what his speciality was he could, and again, going back to when you asked me earlier on about coaches, what's it take to be a coach? And it's sometimes that thing about being able to see, whether it's a training session or a game, and being able to see something that nobody else could see, to be able to change it. What I would say to a lot of people, when people go and watch, which unfortunately we can't now in terms of going to stadiums, but when people go to watch a game of football in the stadium, I guarantee you 90% of the people there they'll be following the ball, because that's what all the action is, And the good coaches of this world, the ball is in their peripheral vision. They're watching the setup of the teams and how players are switched on defensively and almost everything else apart from where the actual ball is, because those are the things that when you can learn about the teams and about players as individuals,
Yeah, I have to admit, yes, I've attended a Premier League match before, and I know how the atmosphere is amazing. But at the same time, I have to admit that I've enjoyed watching football now, because some of the times you can actually hear the manager screaming, and now you get to understand about his tactics and all that. So as a manager, what do you think as a manager? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's like, because you can actually hear someone being told, run to the left, stop the ball, pass the ball. You can actually hear everything. Is this a good thing, or are managers afraid, like maybe some of their tactics are leaking?
Well, I certainly think you're right. I think a lot of managers are out there sort of, quietly guarding what they're saying. Yeah. I mean, I noticed the other day that Jose Mourinho and Frank Lampard had a few words during the game, which would have probably gone under the radar, sort of a year ago or whatever, but now everybody's hearing it. And yeah, it's a difficult one, because I watched some managers. I think it's interesting what Jose Mourinho said that day to Frank, or what he said to him. He actually said to Frank Lampard, or he said to the press, this is what I said to Frank, was that I think Chelsea were losing, and obviously Frank was affected by that emotionally. So Frank was sat down in his chair, basically hands in his pockets and being quiet because his team were losing. And I think Jose said that what he'd said to Frank was, that's the time when your team need you the most to be stood out in the technical area giving orders. They're a bit condescending, I know, but he said the time to sit down is when your team's winning and everything's fine. But no, I think it is more difficult for coaches and managers now, because they are very much aware of the information they're giving. I mean, if you notice the new thing now, even a lot of people are like this talking.
Yeah.
They're also worried about lip reading. So yeah, it's the game's changing.
Yes, and also if you've watched all or nothing, the Spurs one and the Man City one, and I remember people talking about this online on Twitter. You'd see Guardiola's board, and for the Tottenham Hotspur, you'd see Mourinho's board. Also with that, and some people are like, they could actually pick the tactics Mourinho and Guardiola had. So this is not scary, or this is the new age. We have to embrace it. I don't understand it Because if you talk to like managers from all time before, most of them wouldn't actually agree to that, to being filmed.
I think going back to the question you asked me earlier on, Sean, was that I think in my day, certainly when I played, and even up till maybe, I don't know, half a dozen years ago, maybe 10 years ago, that managers were all about, let's say, motivation. You know, winning, it would come in and pat everybody on the back. If you lose, it would come in and, you know, it would be fist banging the table, knocking teacups over, Alex Ferguson kicking a football boot in David Beckham's face. You know, it was all things, motivational things, you know. But I think these days, I think players, they expect more. They want they want the coaches, the managers to come in, whether it's halftime, whether it was when there were water breaks going on. They want to be told, if you like, tactically, am I doing the right things? Positionally, are we okay? You know, decision-wise, are we making the right decisions in the game? All those little tactical innuendos, let's say. This is the modern game, the way it's progressing now, where it used to be a bit more general, you know, run harder, run faster, tackle harder, you know, have a big heart and all those things, you know. So in that way, the game's changed. Coaching has changed.
Amazing. And now most Kenyans also got to know your work mostly when you were at Reading FC, where you joined as a technical consultant before being announced as sporting director. Tell us about that transition.
Yes, it's an interesting story. I was asked by the owners initially to come in. The coach at the time was Jose Gomez, Portuguese coach. He'd come into the team in the championship, and they were struggling in the championship. And I was asked to go in there and help him. My first reaction at the time, I was out of work at the time. Mark Hughes and myself had left Southampton. And my first reaction was to say, well, you know, I don't really want to go and be the assistant manager of a club at the bottom of the championship. And then it was put to me, well, okay, we don't really want you to be assistant manager. Can you go in there as a technical advisor? Just help him with the preparation, go on the training ground if there's any little ideas, any little things you can help with. I initially said, yeah, that would be fine. I'll accept that. But it had to be Jose Gomez that embraced it. If I didn't want to step in there if he wasn't happy with that situation. Luckily for me, and he did. He embraced it, and we got on really well. We had a really good relationship, and finished the season well. And Reading stayed in the championship, where at one time it looked as if they wouldn't. At the end of that season, then I was asked. The club wanted to try and push things and move things forward, so I was asked to become the sport director of the club. Again, I accepted that position, and we had big ambitions to move forward. I know the owner certainly did as well. He was talking about getting into the Premier League and getting the playoffs and moving on and forward. And we started the season off, and the team weren't great. I think they'd won 2 of their first 11 or 12 games. The way this game works, I was asked by the owners then to go and prepare a short list of new candidates. I think he did. And that was hard because, you know, when you're asked by the owner to do that, but at the same time, I'm having to still maintain that special relationship I had with Jose Gomez. So that's difficult. But obviously, I was looking at drawing up shortlists, and I'd spoke to 1 or 2 coaches, managers who were in the game, who were out the game, you know, just trying to prepare that. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call, one of these Zoom calls from the owner, and basically saying, well, did I want the job? Which surprised me, and I was taken aback. I thought, well, I'm sport director. What do you mean? And he got a little bit irate and said, well, look, I've seen your CV. I'd had a look at it. You know, do you want the job or not? And, you know, once he said it like that, very quickly, I thought, well, okay, yes, I want the job. If you throw in the job and tell me you really want me to do it, I'll do it. So I took over the team when we were, I think, one off the bottom of the championship and became the manager. And we had a good, let's say, 2/3, maybe a little bit longer of the season. We had a good rest of the season, finished 13th, 14th in the championship, and it went really well. And that's when it got a little bit what I call sticky. Was the season is finished. I'm hoping or thinking I'm going to carry on this season, carry on being the manager this season. And the owner wanted me to go back to being the sport director again, because he saw my talents as being, well, I can go and run the club for him that way. But as you can tell in my voice in this conversation, I want to be a coach. My forte has been a coach, a manager, and leading the team from the front on the training ground. So I didn't really want to step back into that role. So again, cut a long story short on this one, then I decided to come away from the club because I want to pursue a career as I have been doing as a coach and a manager.
Was it a hard decision leaving Reading?
Yeah, very much so, because I'd given my heart and soul to the place for 18 months, and I felt the club were in a position to push on and challenge for the Premier League this year. And I could have easily, Sean, gone in as sporting director and had a comfortable life, let's say, and they got a beautiful brand new training ground and everything would have been fine. But in my heart, I'm a coach, I'm a manager, and I want to work on the training ground with players to improve them and make them better. Young players as well. I enjoy working with young players. So difficult decision for me and my family, but I think hopefully it'll be the right one in the end.
Yes, and I know Ayub Timbe Masika, the Kenyan international, got a chance to also work under you. Which kind of player is he, and what did you think about him?
Very good, very nice. First of all, very nice person. Always had a smile in his face. I called him. I know he has a different nickname in Africa, but I called him Mas. So Mas always had a smile in his face. Very likable person. It was very hard for him because he'd been playing in China and it hadn't gone really well for him, and he'd had a couple of injuries as well. So when he came into the club, naturally at that situation, at that time, he really had to come in, try and hit the ground running, and get into the team and play his best football. But his fitness wasn't where it should have been or where he'd hoped it could have been because he'd missed a lot of football. So he took a bit of time catching up to his fitness and got, let's say, cameo position situations. He got on in the second half, numerous times, 20 minutes here, half an hour there. I think if you asked him, he'd say he didn't really do himself justice. But I don't know. I think he was unlucky, the fact that it was hard for him to get up to speed with the Championship, which is a difficult league. Playing Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, every week. It was hard for him then to break into it and start too many games. But certainly I was happy with him, with what he produced. He came on and affected most games he came on for me.
Amazing. And what do you exactly look for in a player?
Oh, now that's a good question. I think first and foremost, you want to see a real desire in players. To as I talked about earlier on, that a lot of players, I should say to players at Reading that the very fact that you're at Reading or whatever club you're at, you've obviously got talent. You know that, but there's a lot of things come on top of just having the talent. To make it to the very top, or to even be the best in your specific environment you're in. You have to have a desire. You have to have a strong character. I can churn out all the explanatives to say, these things, coming in every day and wanting to give of your best, and not just maybe having an eye on Saturday and just, going through the motions in the week. That doesn't work for me, and I'm sure, the Pep Guardiolas and the Jurgen Klopps will say the same. If you're going to be successful at whatever level you're at, as a coach, as a manager, then you need all your players giving everything every day, and wanting to improve and wanting to make a difference, if you like. So I guess, yeah, obviously you're looking for, any individual, you're looking for speed, pace, power, ability, all those things. But at the same time, the thing that really makes those players stand out for you is what they've got in their heart, and also what they got in there.
Amazing. Now, I know you said you're very impatient, so we have to ask what projects are you currently working on?
At the moment, obviously, I've come out to Reading about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I have to say, at the moment, football-wise, because of the situation, obviously the season's starting up, I'm watching a lot of football, certainly on television, and again, not just in England and in Europe, but in MLS and around the world too. So I watch a lot and stream a lot of games just to have a good look at different countries. But certainly, from when you say what projects, I've got nothing at the moment, because two things really. I've recently, or very recently, moved house, so that took a lot of my time. And my daughter's having twins, so they take a lot of my time as well. So. So football-wise, it's a case of, for me, just I'm waiting and looking for the next opportunity to go in and take on a good project somewhere.
Yes. Would you consider coaching in the Championship or the Premier League again?
I think anywhere, again, whether it's the Premier League, the Championship, whether it is in a different country, whether it's in Africa, if you've got a good project, you've got a good people to work for, people who want to make a difference and want to really achieve and take whatever team it is, want to take them forward, then yes, I'm all ears and I'm open and really really willing to buy into that situation.
Amazing. Have you been to Africa before?
South Africa. I've been
lovely.
5 times to South Africa. Yes. Other, I went to many years ago. Obviously, next over to South Africa, I went to Swaziland with Tottenham Hotspur. But yeah, and obviously holidays, but not really football wise. But hopefully, you never know in the future.
Yes, and you've seen when it comes to talent, what Africa churns out when it comes to talent. You know, we have Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, Naby Keita. We have Chelsea's new goalkeeper, Eduardo Mendy. And you can just see what exactly, when you say Africa, and even in Kenya, we had now Victor Wanyama in the championship. You worked a bit with Ayub Timbe Masika. So you have seen the talent, and the talent is there. And also now back home, there are millions and millions of football players. So as a coach, which kind of expertise would you bring back, or would you bring, to Africa if you were given a chance to coach here?
It's a good question. I think in terms of expertise, I think it's getting. I've got a history, if you like, of getting the best out of players. And this is now an old cliche, been trying to be whatever group of players have been more than the sum of the parts, you know. And I think it's a lot of African players. I think, I know they've got a huge heart. They want to succeed. They've got a big desire and a big motivation to improve themselves and make themselves better and their families' lives better and all those things. So, and I think it just needs channeling it in the right ways. You know, that they need to be able to trust in a coach and knowing that the environment that they're working in, you know, when they get onto the grass, onto the training ground, that, you know, that they're getting the right kind of work that brings out the best in their abilities. You know, I think, again, as a coach, what you get from experience is being able to look at individuals within a group and knowing how you can make them better and what system you can put them in to really make them shine to the best of their ability.
Amazing. So name some of your 5 top managers in the world / coaches.
Yeah, five. Well, I'll churn out 3 straight away.
Yes.
Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Jose Mourinho. Those 3, I think, they go before, at this certain time, they go before anybody, you know, and because of, I think their drive more than anything else. You know, they've all got different ways of doing things, let's say, but they seem to have that inner drive for excellence. I think more is the best word to use. You know, I think looking at from then on, I think you have a group of young managers coming through that are all striving for that situation. I don't know actually, honest, Sean. I mean, I think it would be remiss for me to just churn out if anybody really wasn't in that bracket to churn out and say that. I just think there's a lot of other young managers. I mean, even like a Brendan Rodgers, whatever he's been, he seems to have a knack and ability of getting the best out of certain younger players coming through, and I know he prides himself on that. But I think any manager would have my admiration again if they're prepared to, you know, show the ability to work with younger players and give younger players an opportunity to bring them through and embrace those younger players. I think, you know, I think certainly because of the COVID situation and the money situation in the game now, I think it's going to really, certainly over the next couple of years, I think it'll be less and less money spent. I think owners and clubs now are looking at managers and recruitment areas of clubs where they're almost saying, well, look, we've got to look at younger players and what we can produce ourselves. And that's what would excite me about working in Africa is, again, like you said, I think it's a vast, vast pool of talent there. Younger players as well who are just willing and hoping for that opportunity. And I think that's got to be embraced.
Yes, amazing. And also, I definitely have to ask this. Someone has sent this to my WhatsApp, and it's about how English coaches feel. You know, the Premier League attracts the best of the best, and it's not just when it comes to players, but also the managers. Do English managers feel some type of way when foreign managers come in and then they get that success, or when the big clubs are quick to actually hand that opportunity to a foreign manager?
I think you're absolutely right, and it is. Yeah, I think English managers do that, and because of the money that's generated in not just in the Premier League but in the Championship as well. Every coach in the world wants to come to this country, you know. And again, this is what I'm trying to look at now. Is I wouldn't say not many, but a lot of coaches then are not prepared from this country, prepared to do that and go and play their trades elsewhere, you know. And that's what certainly when you said about projects. Now I think what I am looking at is, you know, I've spent 20 years in the Premier League, and I think I'm up to about 540 games at the moment as a coach in the Premier League, you know. But I don't. This doesn't sound the right way, the wrong way, but I've been there and I've done that. Now I'm looking at exploring. You know, are there opportunities to be a national team manager in Africa, even? Do you know what I mean? Or go to these different places and try and take your skills into those areas.
Amazing. As we approach the end of our interview, because I think we are running out of time, what are your thoughts on the VAR? I have to ask this. What are your thoughts?
I mean, how long have you got? We could be here hours, couldn't we?
Yes, it's okay. It's okay. We are now at 45, but it's fine. Just feel free. Feel free.
I think now it's here. You've got to try and embrace it. And a little bugbear that I have when, for example, if there's offsides and people are saying, well, yeah, but he was only sort of that much offside. Well,
I know.
There's no that much offside, then he's offside. And, you know, I think, personally, I think it's been huge debate about it, but I think it's been for the best. I really do. I mean, you know, you're talking to someone here who I've never been sent to the stands by any referee, but I've certainly had many run-ins with different referees. So I think, you know, and come away from games and emotions are running high and saying, well, the referee was this, the referee was that, and now sometimes you come in after games and you want to say that, but then you'll check it. You know, your analyst will come in and show it to you, and you'll think, well, actually, he was right there. You know, probably going to better my blood pressure anyway.
Yes, and currently in the Premier League and also the Championship, can you name some of the best players you think in the Premier League and also in the Championship?
I'll give you two. I thought about this before I came on, and you mentioned him early on, but I think for me, I think Sane is the best player in the Premier League. I think he'd be the one that. And yeah, there's many out there, the likes of Harry Kane and whatever. I understand that, but I think Sane would probably be the one in the Premier League if you did a poll of all the managers of what player they would like in their starting lineup. I think he would probably be at the top of that overall poll. So
in the Championship.
In the Championship,
yes.
Again, I'll go for in the Championship. I was very impressed with him last year, Jordan Ayub. Because I think Jordan, for me, he is a Premier League player playing in the Championship. You know, yes, I know he's highly paid at Swansea, but at the same time, he's, you know, every time I've looked him in, he's got that little bit something different, bit extra that stands out in the Championship, because he shouldn't be playing there. He should be in the Premier League. Yeah.
So are you in the Championship and Sadio Mane in the Premier League? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Perfect. So, African players.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes. And so what next for Mark Bowen? I know you've talked about what you want to experience, what you want to do. Of course, we are now getting to the impatient side, which is, I'm also a bit impatient when it comes to my projects. I always want to go from one project to the other. So I totally understand. So tell us, the floor is yours. Feel free to say, you know, what you want to achieve, what next for Mark Bowen, and how people should follow up. And you're not on social media. You need to join Twitter a bit.
Well, yeah, you know, I think social media for me is a little bit like, I think I should be on it, but at the same time, probably when you're in the game a long time, then you're wary of things like reading the wrong things about yourself. Nobody likes to hear bad things about themselves. I think
True.
For the future, Shon, I'd like, you know, I'm open to almost anything as long as it's a good project. I mean, it would be nice to be a national team manager in Africa somewhere. That certainly appeals to me. So if there's anybody out there who's recruiting, then hopefully I'll be in their thoughts somewhere. But no, I'm open to anything that, as long as the project's good and the people who really want to make a difference and make their side better.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us, Mark. Oh, let's take we have a question before we wrap up. Ask him his take on Arteta's decision about Ozil's omission from senior team activities.
Yes, it's a difficult one. It's a lot of money, Ozil, and
£350,000 per week. Wow.
Well, I understand as well. Again, listen, I don't know this. I haven't worked in the club there, but from what I hear the outside, that there's like I talked earlier on all the way through, haven't I, about players having that first of all and be able to. We're in a game where you have to run. Put it that way. Footballers need to be able to run non-stop for their team, to give everything for their team. Probably the only one in world football who I'd forgive is probably Lionel Messi. If the opposition got the ball and he wants to stand still, let him stand still, because we'll get in the ball, he'll win us the game. I think there's not too many really, really successful teams who can carry any players who don't want to run around for 90 minutes and chase. And that's probably the what's been levelled at Ozil the most. His ability is there for all to see, but it's how he works within the team framework.
So how does the manager take all this when you put in the middle and you have all these fans shouting at you, why you're not playing this player, and you also have your own reasons? How does someone deal with that? The pressure, the negativity? Because I think at some point it's a lot to take.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I tell you one thing that I've always said. A lot of people, when they're criticising managers, they'll say, well, he doesn't know certain so he doesn't know his best team. And I would argue that maybe even Pep Guardiola doesn't know his best team. There's no such thing as a best team, because a lot of times you have maybe 8 or 9 players who you want in your side every week, maybe 10 even. But a lot of times that 1 or 2 different calls on different positions will be because of who you're playing that Saturday and how you can best hurt that team. So I don't really believe there's this thing about this. A certain manager doesn't know his best team, because if you've got a strong enough squad, you shouldn't have a best team. There should, all right, maybe a best 13 or 14 players you can dive into, but so that's something that needs to be taken into account. And then again, when teams are losing, people turn around and say, well, he doesn't have a plan B or whatever. Well, again, it's a difficult one, because you really should have a plan A that you think is going to work for you every week.
Yes, and also what happens when, and we've seen this in the media before, what happens when the players turn on the manager? They kind of sabotage the manager.
Yeah. I don't think I've been in that situation 20 years, but again, it can happen. But if it does, there can only be one boss at a football club. Yeah, okay, you have owners. I understand that, but day to day at the training ground, it's got to be the manager's word that counts, and that's that. And once players, or maybe a group of players, 2 or 3, it's never really all of them, because most clubs have got really solid pros throughout. But if things will leak out from 2 or 3, bad people, bad players at times. And like I said earlier on, the best way you can, you either got to get them out the club, or if you can't get them out the club because it's not the window yet, you've got to get them away from the group that they're training with to isolate them as best they can. And again, man management, that's what it's all about.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing so much insight with us. You are a lovely guest, and I've also learned a lot about, being a manager or a coach. That, so many people just celebrate the coach, I think, when the team wins, but they don't know what goes into, coaching and managing a club. So thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. I wish you all the best.
You need me.
Awesome. Of course, we'll do it soon. So thank you so much. That was so much fun. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and for everyone who sent the questions and the comments. People saying, great interview, great show. Thank you so much, Mark. Once again, have a lovely, I think it's now evening on your side. Yes, I know the UK, you are 3 hours behind. And once again, thank you for the guys behind the scene. We have Marvin Kasulam, who's our designer here. And we also have Ed Bowers, who is our producer. Thank you so much. And that was Mark Bowen, former player and also a coach, talking to us. And we are ready to welcome you to Africa. Welcome Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. You're very much welcome.
To everybody in Africa.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.